Hello, viewers, listeners. Welcome to another edition of CHP Talks. We're here today with special guest Jeff Gunnarson, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the Conservative leadership race and how pro-life MPs are interacting with it. So, Rod, why don't you introduce our special guest today?
Well, it's a real pleasure to have Jeff Gunnarson with us today. Jeff is the president of Campaign Life Coalition, and that's an organization that has been doing tremendous pro-life work for decades. He follows in the footsteps of Jim Hughes, another person we appreciate very much for the work that's been done over the years. Jeff was born and raised in Southern Ontario. He lived a so-called normal secular life, and he married Camilla when he was 26. 10 years later, he entered the church, and 10 years later, he joined Campaign Life Coalition, not thinking at all about politics. And now here he is right in the thick of it. In October 2018, he became the new national president. And Jeff, we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, and we appreciate the good work that you and the others at Campaign Life Coalition are doing. You have a great team.
Yes, we do. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with my friends at CHP, because we've always supported everything that you guys have done. And of course, when it comes to elections and any other pro-life work, we're always there to support you. In hearing your introduction, I just realized that things seem to change with me every 10 years. So I don't know. It was 12 years after joining Campaign Life before I became president, although it might have been 10 years when I became vice president. I don't know. So we'll see what happens in 8 to 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes. Thank you very much for having me on. It's a great topic, by the way.
How did you actually get involved with Campaign Life? What were the things that happened in your life that led you in that direction, or even in the pro-life direction?
Sure. Well, during that time between being married in 1986 and entering the church in 96, my wife was a church-going Catholic, and she became even more fervent with her faith once we had children, and she wanted them baptized and confirmed, etc. So she started to go back to church. She wasn't really going back or going on a regular basis when we first met. So she had a conversion or a reconversion, went back to her faith, and and then shortly after that, she started to get involved in the pro-life movement. Her parents were very pro-life. Her dad was always praying rosaries outside of hospitals and whatnot. So she was very entrenched, I guess, in the pro-life ethos growing up. So she jumped into the pro-life movement. And then with all of her colleagues, her friends, volunteers, whatever, at this particular pro-life office, they heard about me. And, oh, your husband's not in the church, or he's not a Christian, or he's not, pro-life or whatever. The irony is I became pro-life before I became, a true Christian. And I'll just cut to that for a second. I was walking through a mall in Burlington, and I saw a bookstore, and it caught my eye. There was one of those lifetime books, or whatever you call them, the big magazines with pictures. And I think the front picture must have had a picture of an in utero baby or something for me to notice it. So I walked in and looked at it.
Well, we lost your audio there.
Opened it up, and there it was. It just showed the development of the fetus and in the womb. And I looked down to see where I can't remember now if I knew it was a boy or not, but anyway, I looked down to see where my son would be, and there it was, 6-month picture of him, and tears welled up in my eyes, and I closed the book, and I walked out, and I said, I'm pro-life. It just came to me like that. So anyway, years later, after many, many, many prayers, and I was also being dragged out to pro-life events. I was sort of the sign carrier, you know. I would show up with the signs or the coffee and the donuts, and I would hand this stuff out, and everybody would be, you know, blessing me and like just showering me in prayer all the time.
Yeah. Wow.
Fast forward to about a year before I entered the church, and a neighbor 2 doors up, who was a former Catholic, now Pentecostal, and she came and shared the word with me. Went to her church a couple of times because she was so insistent, and heard a speaker or two. Anyway, long story short, I just sort of kind of gave in to the pressure. I said, okay, all right, I believe.
Right.
Wasn't quite like that. It was a sincere belief, but I couldn't resist it anymore. That's what it really was. It was sort of like, okay, you win. I believe. I don't know who you are. I know you got to be there. You somewhere. So anyway, entered the Catholic Church, because that's where my wife and kids were going. I didn't really, you know, have any preference at that time, but I thought to stay coherent and unified, I better go to a Catholic church.
Yeah.
So, you know, ironically, though, my first couple of years in the Catholic Church I was dealing with a lot of liberal Catholics, and I was getting the wrong message. And I kept going, gee, that doesn't sound right. That can't be right. So it wasn't until 3, 4, 5 years into my faith that I actually got some good orthodox teaching on the faith, and started to dig into the catechism and find out what it's truly all about. So,
well, there is a decay, not only in the Catholic Church, in many churches, a decay of worldview and a biblical understanding of, you know, even the sanctity of life and so on. It's quite troubling to all of us, you know, from a non-Catholic point of view or Catholic point of view, to see those who are leading the flocks sometimes leading them in the wrong direction. And I was thinking, the verse came to me while you were talking, a little child shall lead them, and you saw this little child in this Life magazine, and it led you into faith, and that's pretty neat how that took place. And I know other people who have become pro-life first, and then have built on that, or the Lord has drawn them into an abiding faith in Jesus. So
it's hard to be pro-life and not a Christian.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I want to pick up a little bit on that theme, that decay that we have seen, because it relates directly to what we want to talk about today. There are some good pro-life members of Parliament. Jeff has worked with them probably more than we have even. We've interviewed Derek Sloan on this channel, and I know we're all in support of his leadership that he's been showing in terms of being a pro-life member of Parliament. But we also know of some out there pro-life parliamentarians that have been somewhat disappointing. So that's kind of where we're going with this conversation. But I want to let Jeff set the stage in terms of the Conservative leadership race, and then we'll segue over into some of the other things that are surrounding it.
Well, we really saw the pro-life movement and social conservatives, Christians. We really saw a marked improvement on the I guess the pro-life cause and you know, the social conservative moral issues really come to the front in the last 2 Conservative Party of Canada leader elections. Back in 2017, of course, we had Trost and Lemieux, and you know, they were written off, all but written off, as being a threat at all. And I know that one reporter that was in the newsroom during that final night at the election, when Scheer won it by a hair, the whole room filled with mainstream reporters were just full of their jaws dropped to the ground. They were cursing and swearing, and it was as if the world ended when they saw that Trost had peaked in 3rd place. Wow. But you know, it was they were just beside themselves, ready to to end their lives. I don't know. It was really like the way he described it. It was just like a all-encompassing moan, a lamentation. Just
Wow.
oh no.
Yeah.
So, but that was really the first time in a long time that we've seen any real play on pro-life issues and euthanasia and everything in between. Even the same-sex marriage came up with Brad Trost's campaign. So that was the start, I'll say, of this what seemed to be almost a steamrolling action that came after that, because the momentum built up there and it continued to a certain degree, leading right into this election. Unfortunately, I mean, that, depending on which way you look at it, the reason the momentum was there is because, well, for one thing, there was an election, but also all of the problems we saw with Andrew Scheer and his inability to express his pro-life views, if he actually has any. But so the process just started all over again, as we know, and having first Richard Takari and Derek Sloan and Leslyn Lewis and Jim Karahalios all joining. I mean, at one point we had 4 out of 6 candidates. Well, there were actually a couple more fringe candidates, right? So we always had, a good number of social conservatives. Why is that? It's because the Conservative Party attracts social conservatives, and we are a huge part of the party. We have to continually to check ourselves and say, it's not, that party, it's not their party, it's our party. Just so much as if I were the CHP member, I am part of the party. I am the party. What drives me, for the most part, drives the party. So if social conservatives are flocking to the Conservative Party of Canada, why wouldn't we have pro-life candidates running? It's ridiculous to think otherwise. The establishment, however, the red Tory establishment that Jim Karahalios coins as, well, he calls them the red Tory establishment, but he says the red coronation of Aaron O'Toole and or Peter Mackay.
Yeah.
The establishment, which are just a few people, by the way, and we're not talking about 50. We're talking about a handful of men and women who control the party, who have been in the party, mostly have been in long time. There are some younger ones, but for the most part, they're well entrenched in the party, and they have big influence. So they don't want. They think it's not so much that they are. I don't want to use the word evil. It's not so much that they are just dead set against social conservatives, but they think, and let me back that up. Some are, perhaps most are, against social conservatives, but it's not so much that. They think that a social conservative can't win, and they just want win. They just want to win. They want power.
Yeah.
And if they believed social conservatism was the way to that power, they would embrace it, and they would promote it and support it 100%. So they fall to the wrong idea that social conservative candidates can't win elections. Absolutely ridiculous. We know it's not true because we've had decades of social conservatives winning elections. We haven't had a really robust leadership candidate winning the leadership, but that's because of internal party pressure more and media pressure more than it is anything else. So
yeah, well, it's first of all a terrible assumption that a pro-life social conservative can't win. I mean, and it's a reflection of society at large, that people just take it. I mean, CBC keeps parroting the thing so often. We continue to, as taxpayers, to pay for them to promote a message that the things we believe in are outdated and can never return. Well, that's just simply wrong. our society has lost its way, and too many people are looking to someone else to tell them how to think and whatever. So we're totally in agreement that pro-lifers have every right to be at the table within the Conservative Party. Of course, in our party, our members are all pro-life, so we don't have that particular discussion as far as should we be pro-life or not. But yeah, we think that pro-life has a legitimate place at not only in the Conservative Party, in our party, but in Parliament. And we don't have to apologize for standing up for the things that God created. The human race that is at the pinnacle of creation and is made in His image. So anyway, thank you for that introduction. Peter, did you want to go on a particular direction from that, or?
Yeah, well, in terms of endorsements, Campaign Life has obviously endorsed Leslyn Lewis and Derek Sloan, right? And some members of Parliament have endorsed these candidates, and some have endorsed Peter Mackay or Aaron O'Toole. And could you maybe just give us a bit of a background as to why you've endorsed Leslyn Lewis and Derek Sloan, but not Mackay and O'Toole?
Okay, I'll start with Mackay and O'Toole. I think we can agree, and it's a no-brainer to know from watching the English and French debates that they are so-called pro-choice, they're pro-abortion. They admitted it publicly, so we don't have to go any further. We knew that before they entered the stage, but a lot of social conservatives have some special place in their heart for O'Toole, based anecdotally, at least, based on comments I see on Facebook and Twitter, etc. In fact, one pro-life group is endorsing him as I believe a third choice. I don't understand that. Like the whole methodology of supporting anybody other than a pro-lifer when you are a pro-life organization just doesn't resonate. I don't understand it. Perhaps I'm just not there yet. But it seems to me a no-brainer that as a pro-lifer, you want to vote for a pro-life candidate. And sure, there's a chance they won't win. And so then we get the devil we don't want. So be it. God's will be done. We have to have courage in our convictions. We have to have confidence, because if we don't, and I know I'm getting a little bit off track, I think I am, rein me in when I do, but we have to have confidence. There are enough of us to win this race. There's enough of us to do that. Are there enough that have taken out memberships? Time will tell. But there are millions of us in Canada, and we just need to unite and back the pro-lifer. It's really that easy. So we endorsed Leslyn Lewis and Derek Sloan. Obviously, well, first of all, we have our standard bearer, which is our questionnaire. So we get them to sign a questionnaire, and we've been able to endorse them just from that. Secondly, we've had training sessions with them. We've had lots of conversations. Derek Sloan has a bit of a record. Don't quote me on what that is, but I think he's had perhaps one vote that we know of that showed his character. But the fact is, we all have seen his 12-point plan, very pro-life, social conservative plan. He's done everything and anything. I don't think he could say much more.
He doesn't back up. He takes a position, and no matter who comes at him from how much pressure they put, he sticks with his position. And that's when you're right. And when you stick with your position and you're right, then that's quite admirable.
It is, and it attracts people to you when you don't waffle. That is so key in especially when you're a pro-lifer, because you're the one under the microscope all the time. And if you can be strong and confident and make people understand your reasons then they will, if they happen to be pro-abortion, they'll overlook your pro-life attitudes or your pro-life positions, and they'll look to your other policies. So we can attract the whole spectrum. And the media and the red Tory establishment does as much as they can to distract us from that and to downplay the importance of strong, well-convicted social conservative candidates.
Yeah.
So anyway, they were easy to endorse. We had endorsed Leslyn Lewis back in 2015 when she ran federally in the Scarborough riding. So it nothing had changed. We had been in conversations with her and communication with her since 2015, and she's been helping on the ground, doing what she can to advance the cause. So those were easy pickings.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll stop there and let you ask part two of that, Peter. I can't remember where.
So with all you've said about these pro-life, about Derek Sloan and Leslyn Lewis, attracting and articulating their position, why are some pro-life members of Parliament not rallying behind them? Why have they endorsed some of the other two? It's puzzling us, that's for sure.
Yeah, it puzzles us as well, but this has been going on forever. There is we all know there's a sense of collegiality amongst MPs. They have seat mates, they have committee members, their fellow committee members, their friends, their colleagues. Perhaps they even knew each other, before becoming elected politicians. So there's a certain amount of that they want to, support a fellow MP or a fellow friend, somebody that they've worked with in the past. That's a natural human condition. I understand it completely. However, if you're running as an MP and you're pro-life and you really genuinely want to see an end to abortion, then I think you have to pick who you endorse very carefully. If you don't like the pro-life candidates, then perhaps you shouldn't endorse anybody.
Yeah.
But
I noticed like two things. I guess both Mackay and O'Toole, they talk about the big tent and social conservatives are welcome and whatever. But, if you're not going to back them, if they're only welcome if they sit in the corner and be quiet, then that's not, then there really is no place for social conservatives in that kind of a tent. I mean, it's going to be very difficult for pro-lifers under either one of those two. I guess O'Toole threw a bone. He said that he would allow a free vote. Mackay said the same thing. Even his cabinet ministers would have a free vote. Well, of course, who's he going to make as his cabinet ministers? Not the ones that are not going to vote his way, right? And
right.
I was quite astonished in the debates how blatantly they could speak out of both sides of their mouth on those issues. Just say that, oh yeah, we need you, we want you, but I'm going in the other direction. And those, I guess there might be some conservatives, some MPs even, who think, well, as long as he allows me to speak my mind, but if the leader doesn't get behind pro-life legislation, I mean, we saw that with Mr. Harper even, and I think Mr. Harper was certainly a cut above some on the political spectrum right now. But even under his leadership, no pro-life bills came to fruition because he basically put the brakes on it for the same reasons. I think that he just thought it was going to be a losing proposition. Obviously, it didn't win him the election in 2015. If they think that being, a red Tory or being pro-abortion is going to secure you a place in Parliament or in history, there's no evidence of that. But if
Absolutely.
and for the pro-lifers running either as a candidate, just in a regular election, or running for the leadership of the party. If you don't clearly state your pro-life position on the way in, I mean, Andrew Scheer kind of failed in that regard. You know, he claimed to have pro-life, policies, but he wouldn't talk about it on the way in. You know, even had he become the prime minister, he would have had no mandate to do anything about it, because if you're not being honest with the people. So anyway, all that stirring around and, oh boy, we need to win, we need to get rid of Trudeau, but you know, if you don't know where you're going after you win, or you don't have a mandate to do something positive after you win, what's the point? You know, it's like a dog chasing a car. If you ever caught it, what would you do with it, right? You know, so.
Right. Yeah. And it does more harm when they do this. This just sends another message to the pro-life community that your vote doesn't count, or pro-life is not on my radar, because why would you back a pro-abort candidate? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Saw a picture. I was extremely disappointed. I just saw an article that's actually about 3 weeks old already. A picture of Cheryl Gallant, MP for Nipissing Renfrew, if I've got that right. She's a stalwart pro-lifer and social conservative. I mean, she got in big trouble back in the day, saying things that are not politically correct. And she's always been supported by Campaign Life, and I'm sure she will be. But to send to have this article with a picture of her, with Peter Mackay, and behind them a bunch of cadets holding a pride flag. If that isn't an optic to show everything that is wrong with Canadian politics as far as we're concerned, right, I don't know what is. It epitomizes everything we're against. Yeah, I don't get it.
And we appreciate that at Campaign Life, I mean, you're kind of reformed around the abortion issue, but we appreciate that you recognize the importance, the urgency, the value of the other, taking a strong position on other issues like euthanasia, assisted suicide, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and certainly on the gender confusion area, which then that bleeds into, the school system and educational standards and so on. And we're thankful that you are taking a position on those things and informing, through LifeSite News. I know I'm not quite sure exactly the connection, but basically a lot of the same people involved with LifeSite News and with Campaign Life Coalition, and you're educating the world.
And the interim newspaper,
that's the best places to go for, the true news about some of these issues. So, and so a politician, I've heard some say, oh, well, as long as they're pro-life, we don't really care where they stand on, the gender issues and that. Well, to us, that's kind of incomprehensible. These things are all tied together. And
they are. It's much like, our Christian faith. We can't, the faith involves a basket of there are 10 commandments for one, and a whole bunch of other elements to it, if you will. Sure, there's a very sort of standard, all-encompassing rule that you must believe in Jesus Christ to get to heaven, but you got to follow the 10 commandments as well. So same with all of these issues. All of these issues are a basket of moral issues that you can't agree with one, even if you disagree with all the others. It's not a cafeteria. It's not a all you can eat type of smorgasbord. It's you've got to take it all. You got to take it all, and which I don't think we want to get into this, but we at Campaign Life Coalition know very clearly, very well, that we can make gains politically, but the culture has to come around too. And we're not going to see that without a big conversion of people. Like you can put rules in place, but they won't sustain. They won't, they will not be in concrete without conversion, because they'll just blow away with the next leadership campaign or the next election. So we have to understand that all of these moral issues have so much to do with people coming around to a worldview that is consistent with a belief in Christ. And that's, nothing's going to stay. Nothing's going to evolve into goodness without him.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we can see that.
Well said. I like that. The coming to a consistent worldview, and I mean that's what CHP is all about. So trying to really make sure that every policy that we are talking about is consistent. Love your neighbor as yourself being the bottom line in terms of relations to each other, and obviously our actions before God, loving God first. So
Right.
Rod,
Yeah, we can see it in the States where the generation, it's not a whole generation, but certainly there are crowds in these big cities tearing down the monuments, and they've gone completely crazy. I don't want to get far off on that topic, but they are forgetting their heritage and forgetting what made their country great in the first place, tearing down statues of founders of the country, Francis Scott Key, that wrote the Star Spangled Banner. All these things, they're just mindlessly tearing down, and obviously when you read their stuff, they actually want to tear down the family structure as well.
Yeah.
So we need our society to go in a different direction. They do down there as well, but we need our society to be going, appreciating life, appreciating the differences in male and female as God created male and female, and appreciating the opportunity for freedom of speech, not political correctness and a narrowed speech, but allowing people to find their own voice and to find dignity. And of course, we and you are wanting to be a voice for the preborn, for the unborn, so that they also can have a voice and have those kind of freedoms in the future.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, I want to bring this back briefly to Jeff and to Campaign Life Coalition. I know that one of the ways that I have been able to that have benefited from Campaign Life, from the emails. Thank you for the emails that you send, Jeff, but also from the rating that you give, the red light, the amber light, and the green light, in terms of whether they're pro-life with the green light, amber where it's a little more ambiguous, and red light. I know that that's a good resource for many, and if you haven't checked it out, do so. Jeff, could you give us the website so that people can check that out for future research?
Sure, it's campaignlifecoalition.com. And when you get on the main page there, you'll see a news box, a slider, and you'll see the voters guide. At this point, at this time, because we're in the leadership, you'll see our voters guide. So you can click on that, and you can see all of the platforms that each candidate's offering and why we have supported this one over that one. And we actually have a grade marking on there for each candidate too. So that's very useful for this. If you're not a party member and you're not going to be voting, you can still go in there and find out what your MP is up to by just either typing their name in the search box, or just going to voter, I can't remember the actual button name, but click around, you'll see, federal, you'll see provincial. The more you click, the more you're going to learn. So just go in there and take a look.
Yeah. Other place I would encourage people to go is LifeSite News, LIFESITE, and I don't have the I always go with a link there, but I don't know. Is it lifesitenews.ca or
.com?
.com. Okay.
Yep.
Great place to go. And Jeff, we sure thank you for what you're doing, you and your team. You have people across the country. We've met many of them in different provinces. In Ottawa area, we got to know some of your team there. And we just really appreciate so much the work you do to educate, inform, and motivate people to get out there and support the pro-life cause, especially in the political realm. We're very appreciative of that.
Always, we right back at you, Rod. We appreciate your efforts to move the yardsticks forward on this cause, and love to see at conventions and at conferences with your booth set up and everything else. We have a lot of CHP supporters on our database as well. We get mail from them all the time, and you know what? Hopefully, one of these days we can come up with a solution to getting more Christians to vote their heart and not their misinformed brain. And
Right.
maybe we can see some. And I don't say that as a slight. I just say that you know many of us don't have who aren't involved day to day in the political the political goings on of the pro-life movement. It's hard sometimes to understand why take a certain position. Yeah, you know, the pro-life thing is one thing, but the political strategy and whatnot is completely different, and that's what I referred to. You alluded to in the introduction that I just didn't have a clue about politics or how it should work or could work when I came to Campaign Life, and I'm maybe halfway there. So hopefully by the time I'm ready to leave, I'll have it all. But anyway, it's comforting to have CHP. I know you have our backs and we have yours. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's been
Well, thank you. And
great
Jeff,
having this chat.
Yep.
So, Peter, are you all done?
sorry, no, I wondered if you had a last word there, Rod.
Well, of course, we can't help putting a little plug in for the CHP as well. CHP has been around for some decades as well, and all of our leaders have always been pro-life. That's why people generally join the party. And some of our, we would probably be helping out with the voting there, except that we are, the Conservatives have a rule: you can only belong to one party. So we don't encourage people to leave our party to join another one. But we do stand behind Derek and Leslin. We think it would be best for the country if one of them were chosen to lead the Conservative Party. And whatever the case, we are going to stand firm on the positions that we've taken in support of life, family, and freedom. We'll continue to do that on into the future, whatever the future holds. It's too important to leave that up to others. And for any of those pro-life MPs listening in, if you've accidentally or mistakenly given your endorsement to one of the pro-choice candidates, it's not too late to repent and throw your support behind one of the pro-life contestants. That would be the right thing to do, and we'll give you the credit for it. So thanks.
Okay.
Peter, you can close us off.
Thanks, Rod, and thanks again, Jeff, so much for being on with us today, giving your thoughts. Thank you all to everyone who's watching or listening. We thank you for your attention, and God bless you, and may God bless our country.
Oh, pro-life.
Yeah, amen.